Hello, this is Mr. Russell, your AP Biology teacher. Today we're going to continue our discussion on biochemistry, and our topic of today is going to be water. This will be the first part of our notes for this topic. We know that water supports all life on Earth. So water is mainly found inside of living things in their cells. It makes up about 70 to 95% of the organism's body for all life forms on Earth. We also know that water is the only substance on Earth to be found in all three states naturally, those being solid, liquid, and gas. Now, a good term to, when you're looking at your notes, I want you to circle this term, and that term is going to be biogeochemical cycles. Bio meaning life. You may want to circle that. And geo means earth. I'd put maybe a square around that. So understand that bio, life, geo, earth. So biogeochemical cycles are just basically one example of cycling of matter. Now, remember the old song about water travels in a cycle? Yes, it does. Well, the water cycle is just an example where water vapor is generated by the sun, causing evaporation of the bodies of water such as oceans and lakes. This water vapor is carried by the winds to almost the whole world. It condenses in the air to make rain or snow, referred to as precipitation. And then it is returned to the land or ocean. Eventually, the water that lands back on land makes its way to plants or rivers and streams that lead back to the oceans. Well, plants take in the water and use it for photosynthesis, but also can lose it in the form of transpiration to the air. And we know that water is a polar molecule. When we think about water's polarity, also allows for it to make hydrogen bonds easily, which helps with nutrient transport. Remember the two negative electrons from hydrogen are clumping. We discussed that last time. They're clumping around the oxygen atom as a result of the covalent bonding between hydrogen and oxygen. So the oxygen molecule has more electrons than normal and thus a negative charge. The hydrogen end just as the single positive proton. One side is negative and the other side is positive. This polarity makes it possible to conduct electricity very well. Remember, electricity is a flowing of electrons. Remember kinetic energy? The polarity allows for a single water molecule to bind to 4 other water molecules at a time. Another property of water is that it is cohesive. So look at water cohesion. This term just refers to the water's molecule binding to other water molecules. Always think about this as kind of like when you're driving down the road on a rainy day and you watch the little water droplets as they race up the windshield. And if you notice, what always happens to the small ones when they're beside the big ones? Well, they always end up attaching. Well, this would be cohesion. The term refers to water molecules binding to other water molecules. This property is made possible because of hydrogen bonds. This is important in the cohesion tension principle. I would circle that because this is one of those concepts that's going to come up throughout the course. This cohesion tension principle describes how water moves upward in plants through the xylem tissue to make water chains. So as we're looking at our notes, underline the term xylem. Now, so not only is water cohesive, but it is also adhesive. So look at adhesion. This term refers to water molecules binding to something other than water molecules. The property is made possible because of hydrogen bonds here again. Remember hydrogen bonds being weak bonds, they can attach to different things and then they can release. Remember we talked about our DNA attaching and being easily broken, those bonds are. Now, if we think about Earth and its temperature, water helps with temperature regulation in all organisms on Earth. So water can act as a huge piggy bank, such as when the sunlight hits the ocean and the other bodies and the water heats up slowly as it absorbs in that sunlight that's being taken in from the sun. Well, this property is made possible because of hydrogen bonds again. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to break all 4 hydrogen bonds at once and turn it liquid water into gas. So this is an important worldly effect as it helps to keep the temperature of the earth stable. The water of the ocean absorbs the sunlight, but it does not evaporate completely. So this does this so that we don't really fry on those good hot summer days. And then it releases that same energy at night so that we don't freeze. Remember that one side of the earth is always in the sun and the other side is in the dark, so temperatures are stable. One way I think of this is if you've ever been to the beach or maybe you've been to the river, and during the daytime, if you're walking across the sand barefooted or if you're walking across the parking lot barefooted, it is so hot on your feet it can burn. Well, you run to the water and you get in there and you cool your feet off and it feels so good. Well, at nighttime, if you think about that, when you're walking across that parking lot or walking across the sand, it's very cool. And when you put your feet in the water, it feels a good bit warmer. This is that absorption and that release of energy. So it is storing that heat energy like a piggy bank so that our world doesn't burn us up or freeze us to death, so that we have equilibrium. Now, if we think about ice cubes, what happens to the ice? Well, ice cubes in cold drinks, the hot drink molecules lose energy as they try to warm up the frozen water molecules and thereby causing the drink to cool down. Evaporative cooling. This is another term that you need to circle. This has an effect on plants and animals. So this process of evaporative cooling is when you put heat energy into water, causing the water to evaporate and carry the heat energy away from the body, thus providing a cooling of the organism to occur as the energy leaves. Think about sweating. That's this whole process of evaporative cooling. Well, wind increases the effect of cooling by carrying the water vapor away from the body. The problem is, being here in the deep south, is humidity. Water vapor is already in the air. It decreases the effect because water can't really evaporate into the air that is already full of water vapor. Therefore, we feel that good, hot, muggy temperature that we're in, and the sweat just doesn't go away for us. Now, if we think about expansion of water when it freezes, whoops, sorry, I got ahead of myself there. Here we can see this in plants, our evaporative cooling. Now, here we go. So if we think about expansion of water when it freezes, water condenses down to about 4% Celsius or 4 degrees Celsius. After that, the colder it gets, the more it expands. Hydrogen bonds move outward to a 90-degree angle from its original position of 105 degrees. This movement pushes the water molecules further apart, and thus it becomes less dense. Now, if we think about this, we think about what about in the water or underneath when we got ice that is frozen. Life was and is still able to survive under the floating ice that occurs at the poles during the winter. And the main part of this the reason is because oxygen is going to be more saturated in that cold water, allowing those fish and the organisms that are under the ice to be able to survive. If you think about here in the south, when do we have big fish die-offs? Well, a lot of times it's during the summertime. And the reason is the oxygen is going to be released from the water. It just doesn't absorb it because it's so hot, and therefore our fish will die. Whereas during the wintertime, more oxygen in the water. All right, that's all for this session on water. We will continue next time.